This is Windshield Hoops, everybody. What is going on? This is Wilder Adams alongside Zach Rudine, and we have a very special guest, Theo Ash, of his incredible TikTok platform and beyond, the Stay Hot Pod. What's going on, Theo?
I'm doing good. Good to talk some NBA. I know that I'm Theo Ash NFL on most of these platforms, but I got the DM from Wilder, and I know a Cronkite guy has got to support another Cronkite guy. So here I am on the show. I really like your work and excited to get into it.
Yeah, man, I appreciate that very much. Obviously, the respect is incredibly mutual. He is a big NFL guy, but you guys can see on the Stay Hot Pod, he knows multiple
He knows
sports
ball.
at a high level. Exactly. So, Zach, how's it going?
It's going great, man. Great to have Theo on. I'm excited for today's show.
Yeah, absolutely. We have quite a few topics to talk about. Today, there was a big, I wouldn't say big news, like moderate news, big news for late July, but Jaylen Brown's extension finally happened today. So we'll talk about that. We'll talk about some year 3 breakout candidates. We'll rank rookies based on our 10 favorite rookies based on what we expect in terms of production. I have a mock trade I'm going to give you guys. Would you rather build around at the end? And before that, we will have a directionless team mock draft. So teams that are just like absolutely clueless. What are they doing? Do they have any idea what they're doing? So we'll talk about that. So yeah, let's get started right away to the Jaylen Brown extension. So he signed a 5-year, $304 million extension. And to people who think that sounds crazy, it is the most in NBA history, but it's only 35% of the cap. So it's no different from any Supermax extension of the past. It's just the cap is up, but it's still notable. So, hey, Theo, I'm going to start with you right away. What's your initial thought of the Jaylen Brown extension?
I think it was something that was necessary. I think that I can't think of any better idea off the top of my head for a better thing that the Celtics could do in their situation. It's a little bit tough with Jaylen Brown because he does have distinct weaknesses, and it's been, talked about how the Heat were able to exploit that, like make him dribble, make him go left. He'll lose his handle. He had some bad performances, and it's a real problem for sure. But on the other hand, it's like, I just don't understand what else they could have done to keep being a finals contender, because you could let him walk. Like, you can't let him walk and still be a finals contender because he is so good on defense. He can create his own shot. He has been efficient in the past. He's been the number 2 on a team in the finals before. Like, their window remains open now that they've done this move. Absolutely. And I guess if you were to trade him away, it's a little bit tough to get equal value back for him, because this extension was coming. Whether it be the Celtics or some other team, you're getting Jaylen Brown on this deal, which again isn't the ideal deal, perhaps, because he's not as good as some other Supermax players. And so because you do have to overpay him a little bit, you're probably not getting like a super like Godfather package trade deal. So, like, yeah, it is a lot of the cap. They'll have to make it work. But this idea that they should have let him walk, or that they made a mistake by doing this, I don't really know that I'm on board with that. He's still plenty young. I still think that there's a potential that he has his best season in the future. I don't think he's like past his prime or anything like that. And if he can have his best years in front of him, which I don't think is impossible, I don't think the Celtics will regret doing this to any major extent. They should still be deep in the playoffs. They should still be contenders.
Yeah, it's a next man up type pay situation. Like, it's gonna become an overreaction about the money he's making, because he is now the highest paid player in history, because he was the first guy eligible to make this contract. Like, there's going to be several other guys. There's gonna be players worse than him that get the same money. I mean, it's what they had to do. Like, some people were saying, like, Theo's mentioning, like, maybe you trade him away in a sign and trade or something. Like, I don't see what type of assets you're getting back to, push for a finals at that point. Like, it would have been, maybe some young players that would take time to develop. And I think it just makes more sense to push this window. It's going to get complicated with the new CBA probably, though. That's something they'll have to worry about.
Right.
But when you have guys like Tatum and Brown, now Porzingis, the guys that you fill around in those, players don't have to be as good as, other teams would need to do. But yeah, this is something, the Celtics need to do. And I think people will kind of warm up to the idea of this once more players sign this type of contract.
I agree, and we don't know what was on the table in case of a sign and trade. Like, we
Yeah.
can't know if they looked into that, and maybe there's a sign and trade that we could like that, like, maybe makes sense, but we don't know what was on the table. Like, maybe they could have traded him to Portland for a bunch of young pieces, like some of their young players. But like, we don't, maybe that would have been ideal for the Celtics, but like, we don't know if that was on the table, or that's just an example specifically, like what else could have been there. So it's kind of hard to criticize the other path or not taking the other path when we have no idea what other paths were on the table. So yeah, so to me, like the only two known options are pay him or don't. And not paying him would be pretty
Weird.
risky.
Yeah.
Would be pretty risky.
It's a damned if you do, damned if you don't in the media world, right? Because people are going to complain either way. Because Jaylen Brown is a controversial player for the reasons you said. He has limitations as a playmaker, as a ball handler. You know, if they don't pay him, all of a sudden you are likely kind of messing up the chemistry of that room when they're trying to win a championship with them just acquiring Kristaps Porzingis, right? But at the same time, if they pay him, NBA Twitter is going to be mad because NBA Twitter hates Jaylen Brown. You know, that's kind of the situation here. And I think this is a reality check for people that this is just what the NBA is right now. Like, personally, I think with the way Jaylen Brown has gotten better every single year since 2016, coming in as a super raw number 3 overall pick and just expanding into a top 20 player, he's a guy I would bet on expanding as a ball handler personally. I still think he has another gear in him personally, but at the same time, I get it. Like $304 million is crazy, but that's what's just going to happen for players who make the All NBA team. They're going to get 35% of the NBA salary cap, which is the supermax. And if people don't like that, then there has to be some sort of change down the road. You know, I personally don't love that the NBA has it where if you recently just make an All NBA team, you are eligible for that kind of money because you're lumping in a third team All NBA player with an MVP.
Yeah.
There's a big difference between the two. So it's way too general right now, in my opinion, how they kind of lump the first team to third team guys all together financially.
I agree. I think that that's a good point, that the structure, if you're mad at the Jaylen Brown contract, part of the reason for that is he has to basically get it as soon as he was named third team All NBA. And it kind of takes the negotiating power away from the Celtics at all when, that's what he's eligible for, as opposed to, maybe leaving more room for interpretation at the bottom of those All NBA teams. You would probably know more about it than me, but I think that's a good point.
And with, this new rule of 65 games needs to be played, there's going to be players that shouldn't be making All NBA teams that will now be making them. And now you're going to have even worse players being eligible for Supermax deals. Like, that's going to be weird. Like, who's a guy who could, maybe like, imagine if D'Angelo Russell in 2019 had those rules and made a third team and then, got paid a Supermax because of it. Like, that stuff's going to happen.
Yeah, and that, I guess those are just the situations where you let them walk, if they're going to be demanding that kind of contract. Because Jaylen Brown's definitely someone who I don't think benefited too much from any injuries. Like he was just straight up like very, very good.
Yeah,
so it wasn't like a fluky All NBA or anything like that. So yeah, I think it is a contract. I don't know if it's a good it's a great contract for Jaylen Brown, if we phrase it that way. Is it a great contract for the Celtics? I'm sure that like ideally their price point was like slightly lower, but I have a feeling as soon as he broke out and they made the finals, they pretty much made plans to pay him whatever he asked for, because as long as they've got the Jays and they're 26 and 25 years old respectively, that's a pretty big championship window that they've got open. So,
yep.
I'm sure people would I think people would rather pay Nikola Jokic 5'270" than Jaylen Brown 5'304. I am sure. But yeah, it's just one of those things. Like, if you're mad about Jaylen Brown getting extended, just wait 2 years down the road. Jaylen Brown is better than a lot of players who are about to get that type of money. And I anticipate that's going to be a huge topic in the next CBA. Like, okay, why is DeAndre Ayton making $55 million, guys? Okay, I get it. He plays 67 games this year, and Embiid played 64. But, like, there's going to be topics about these fringe all NBA players. I'm not saying DeAndre Ayton is a fringe all NBA player. He's not close. Just a random name that came out of my head. But, like all these like stars, but not superstars making MVP money, there has to be a distinction. I made a proposal on Instagram today. Like if you made a first team all NBA in the last 2 years, that you're eligible for Supermax. Otherwise, you're eligible for a max. That's how I think it should be. So you're kind of making it more exclusive than what it is right now. So maybe the worst case scenario, you're paying an Embiid that type of money who just won MVP instead of, a Karl Anthony Towns. I mean, Cat making a super max, that's a different conversation, but that's a testament to the problem of the way it's structured right now, because the stars aligned, he got lucky, he got the super max. And now that looks like a liability to many people. And if you are a top 15 to top 25 player, it's unfortunate that a player that good could be looked at as a liability just because of the way contracts are structured right now.
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good take. I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah, appreciate that. So Jaylen Brown, and by the way, speaking of Jaylen Brown, one more thing before, I think this is going to kind of show the way NBA teams are going to be structured over the next 7 years with the new CBA, because I mean, we saw Boston, they made that trade. They got 2 first-round picks in the KP deal, and then they made that trade back at 25, and they acquired more picks. These teams who are trying to contend, they're not going to go and just go buy 4 Supermax contracts all the time anymore. That's just not going to happen with the new CBA, with the way I'm sure you guys have heard of it. Like if you go over the second apron of the luxury tax, you have
You get
basically you can't sign anybody really other than minimum players. You can't use your exceptions. You can't put cash in a trade. And if you go over, this is the crazy part. If you go over the second apron 2 of the next 4 years, your draft pick automatically, even if you're the worst team in the NBA, moves to the bottom of the first round. So the CBA is brutal.
Wow.
I don't think people are going to touch that for too long. So you see teams like Boston, and they're getting draft picks because they understand with Brown and Tatum taking 70% of the cap, it is going to be it's going to be a team filled with a lot of either minimum contracts or young players. So might as well bet on the young players with draft picks.
Yeah, and they'll just keep re-signing guys too, because I think you can keep re-signing guys, and it would just you just keep going up in cap. But yeah, it's going to be interesting in 3 years how teams are handling this.
Yeah, it's
I wonder if we could see, what was the Hawks team? What year was that when it was like Al Horford and they were the 1 seed and it was like no superstars at all? Yeah, I wonder if like we could start to see more teams built like that start to contend again in the post like Golden State era. That's kind of dominated. And yeah, I that is really inhibiting stuff, and we'll see, because even 2 players taking up 70% of the contract when you can't go over the salary cap or the apron at all, like it is pretty tough. But it's tough to like, maybe that could age poorly. And I think the Suns are another team that could like kind of be a victim of this. Like they're probably the ultimate example of a team that is 2-star studded. The Celtics giving that much money to 2 players, is 2 players enough if the bottom of the roster can't be filled with a bunch of stars? Like, who knows? But it's kind of tough to be the first one to take the leap into saying like, we're going to turn a star away because of these new rules, because it's just a total leap into the unknown. And it's just the 2, I guess. It's not like the Suns where you've got, 3 and even 4 if you count Aiden. So yeah, I agree.
Sure.
It's going to be bizarre. I am so curious. I think it's going to end up honestly messing up the middle guys more than anybody. I mean, if you're one of those players who historically are worth $10 to $18 million, those players are going to be pretty shut with this new thing, because it's going to be, you have these random guys. I mean, not even superstars making $35 million plus, and then all your cap's taken up. Well, we can't afford you,
Right.
Bruce Brown anymore. You have to go down to 7 million or below. I think it's going to end up kind of like cutting out the middle class, which I think once again is going to end up being a major topic in the 2029, 2030 CBA. So I could 2029, but
I think it'll give teams an opportunity, though, to get some bargains, though. Like, if you're a team without a superstar right now and you're not giving,
Mhm.
like, multiple players that much money, you've got an opportunity to kind of build a whole team out of those, like, 10
Yeah.
to $18 million a
Yeah.
year guys and make a really well-rounded team while others are forced to be extremely top-heavy. And I think that that's another interesting dynamic that could add to the parity of the league. I think that we could see some really unique team builds and rosters that aren't quite as star-studded, making deep runs into the playoffs. So yeah, it'll change everything, and this is kind of more part of the course. I think that this is a pretty normal thing, and the CBA is kind of making it more risky. But as far as like, this is a pretty normal course of action for an NBA team is to sign Jaylen Brown. So
Yeah.
I don't think it can
Yeah.
be criticized
Sure.
too heavily, because I think most teams around the NBA have always done the same thing and would do the same thing in a Celtics situation.
Especially because, to your point about like parity, no NBA team can spend under 90% of the cap either. So every NBA team has to spend. Like Houston, when they had like all that cap space this summer, they kind of had to throw money at Dylan Brooks. That's just
Right.
And Jock Landale.
That's
yeah,
right.
Jack.
Giving
That was-
Jock Landale like $8 million a year.
Even though it's like none of it's guaranteed. It's a really weird contract.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
I'm not
weird.
sure if that's a bad contract or not. But yeah, that was a very interesting topic. I think the Jaylen Brown situation is a reflection of where we're headed in the NBA right now over the next few years. I think fans who don't realize it will realize how big these CBA changes, how big of an impact they are going to make. So let's transition. The 2021 NBA draft a couple years back was one of the most hyped draft classes since 2003. And it hasn't, I wouldn't say it's been bad. It's been pretty deep, but it hasn't been like quite as dynamic as the best draft since 2003 you would think would be. But, it's only 2 years in. Year three is a big year when people start to break out. So, hey, Zach, I'm going to start with you. Who are some, year three breakout candidates?
Well, obviously the main one that most people allude to is Cade Cunningham, who missed basically the whole last year. I mean, you're talking about a guy who was alluded to very highly as a prospect coming out of OSU. And yeah, I think this is a big year for the Pistons. They got to show some sort of growth. They've been in this tanking hole for like 4 or 5 years now. They're going to have to start to win some games, and he's going to be, the biggest proponent of that. And, what does his development look like? Can he really turn out to be a number 1 overall pick? And I think it's very possible that he will. Another guy, Trey Murphy, Pelicans. This dude is a stud. I think he is a big player going forward for this Pelicans team. I think he's somebody that might actually have all-star upside at some point. And I just think his 3-and-D type ability, his ability to score the basketball. Now he's scoring almost 15 a game last year, the way he broke out last year even. I think he could even take a bigger step this year. I think I'm excited to see what he does for the Pelicans this year too. But Cunningham is probably the main one that has to be mentioned.
Theo?
I'm not totally out on Jalen Suggs in Miami. I think that he took a big jump going from his rookie year to his second year. The problem is he was so bad his rookie year that even a big jump is like still kind of a below average player in a lot of metrics. But showing that positive growth in terms of efficiency as a scorer and even as a defender, I think he got a little better from year 1 to year 2. It's a young team, and I think when they're all growing together, things could get better pretty fast with a lot of their players. He's someone that I think has been written off and kind of ignored. Like you said, Cunningham is the big one, and Jalen Green as well. But he was at the top of that draft class too, and he's from Minnesota, so I got to give him a shout out.
That is excellent awareness by Theo right here. He knows we're both from Minnesota, so yeah, shout
I'm
it out.
also from Minnesota.
Oh, you're from Minnesota too?
Yeah, I'm from Northfield.
I thought you were
No,
from
I'm from Northfield, Minnesota.
Oh my gosh, this
So-
is like a Minnesota super team here.
It is a Minnesota super team. So Jalen Suggs will be included from his rookie year to his second year. I just had the stats up and now they're not up anymore. But yeah, it was like a lot of numbers that started with a single digit in terms of percentile. Like he was in the 12th percentile in points per shot attempt in 2021. Then it was 31st percentile. So again, 31st is still below average, but it's getting better. in terms of his 3-pointers. It was going from 22% his rookie year to 34%. So 34% isn't super ideal for a combo guard, but it's a lot better than 22%, right? So you're seeing some of this like growth. It's quiet growth because it's not really like jumping off the screen at you. But a lot of his numbers are trending in the right direction, and he's still a young player on a young team.
Yeah, that Orlando situation is weird because they got so many young point guards now.
So many. They just drafted Anthony Black, 6th overall.
Yeah, they took another point guard 6th overall, and they have Cole Anthony, who's a good young guard, Markelle Fultz, now Jalen Suggs. Orlando has a lot.
And it could happen in a different situation too if they want to move one of those guys and get a veteran. I had a guy DM me on Twitter, and he said that his cousin worked for the Magic and they were trying to get Dame. That's literally a DM on Twitter from some random guy about his cousin. So
okay, everybody, let's aggregate this.
Let's aggregate. Yeah.
So, NBA reporter Damian Lillard,
if this guy's cousin really works for the Magic, who knows? But I could definitely see them like they're so young and they've got so many young guards. Like maybe you could ship a few of them out and get a veteran. Is it going to be Lillard? Of course it's not. But like I could see a trade getting made, and maybe that Suggs breakout doesn't quite happen on the Magic. But if you were another team who wanted one of these young guards and the Magic were selling any of them, Suggs I think would be an attractive option to get in a package.
Theo, I'm sorry, I tuned out. All I took away from that is that Damian Lillard is an Orlando Magic. That's crazy. I can't believe that happened already. Okay.
Wow. Yeah. Yes.
I'm just kidding. Yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, could they end up flipping a couple of those guards to get some veterans on that team, like you said? That is definitely something to look out for. And I have a couple candidates I want to talk about. This first one, it's not necessarily a pick of mine of who I think is going to break out, just somebody who should break out because it's pretty favorable. Jonathan Kuminga of the Warriors. I mean, we have Draymond Green all over his podcasting. Obviously, people have different opinions on that. But Draymond talking about like, oh, Chris Paul and me, we're going to set up Jonathan Kuminga year 3, big leap. Obviously, this kid's a big-time talent. I mean, at one point, he was a potential number 1 overall pick. And he hasn't quite popped like that. Some of his shooting and his creation limitations have held him back, but also he's on a team trying to win and he's young, so he's now with Jordan Poole gone and James Wiseman gone, like the only young player there, along with Moses Moody. But they are very dependent on how he does for their season success, especially because I think he kind of is best set up as like a big 4, almost somebody who's a big slashing 4, because I don't think he's quite skilled enough to play the 3, in my opinion. So could the Warriors with Chris Paul in the pick and roll, Draymond Green and his connective playmaking and that offensive flow, maybe he's a small ball 5 at times. Like, can they do stuff with Kuminga and make him a big piece? Because they really need him to, with that aging roster. And another guy I have, he's my guy. Zach knows that. Scotty Barnes, the Raptors. I mean, he had a bad second year. I get it. But
worse than his rookie year.
Huh?
It was worse than his rookie year.
His playmaking took a big step, though. I mean, his scoring was worse than his rookie year.
Yeah,
but
his efficiency was too.
Yeah. So, yeah, he had a down second year. He had a lot of pressure. He wasn't healthy. There's a lot of excuses and nonsense. I'm not going to do that. He just had a bad second year. But you know what? Hey, I'm not saying he's John Morant, but John Morant had a down second year with efficiency too. So, come on, Scotty. I mean, I still think this dude's a big-time talent. I really think if Toronto just gives this kid the keys, and with Fred VanVleet gone now, maybe that opens a path for him to enhance his playmaking. And obviously, I just think the scoring is going to come naturally. He started to figure it out late in the season. I think Scotty Barnes is going to come back and show everybody why he's a future All-Star, a future All-NBA type talent. And I'm excited for that. And yeah, those are my 2 guys.
Yeah, and I think that Kuminga's an interesting pick, and I remember, what Chris Paul did for DeAndre Ayton when Chris Paul first came to the Suns, and like made a conscious effort to get him involved in the low post, and that was super beneficial to Ayton's career. And maybe Ayton was giving you pretty good play for a stretch there, especially during the finals run when he played the Bucks. He was good in that playoff series. I don't know if Kuminga is going to quite reach those heights, but yeah, if the vets on the team are going to make a conscious effort, and he's the only young player, and the coaching staff and everybody on the team is just like set their sights on like, let's develop this guy. Those are good conditions for a guy to develop in, especially on a franchise like Golden State. So I like that pick. One guy, I was wondering your thoughts on him because I don't know much about him, but just thumbing through the stats and third-year players, one guy who might be useful would be a Trendon Watford in Portland. He's going into his third year. He had above average efficiency for a big with 126.6 it was points per shot attempt, so total points scored per 100 shot attempts. It was above average. His usage rate was about average last year. He had over 1,000 minutes and did some decent things with those minutes and created decently well for a big man as well. I don't know, and I haven't scouted him or watched his film or anything, and it looks like on defense he can be a bit of a negative, but he's someone to maybe keep an eye on because that's a young team in Portland, and who knows how everything there could shake out.
I would say the first thing is he's going to get opportunity.
Yeah, I was going to say.
I'll be surprised if Yusuf Nurkic ends up on the team after the first part of the season. So they don't really have a center. Eubanks left, obviously, to Phoenix. So now they have to figure out, like, okay, who's our center? And Wofford might end up being the starter there. I mean, I'm excited for Portland, man. They got also Walker, who they took in the second round last year. I really liked him out of Colorado. He's going to be good just as a defender, rebounder, and outside shooter. I love Walker. So I'm very intrigued by what he's going to do. And also Watford, he's going to get opportunities. What do you say, Zach?
Yeah, we'll figure out, who all these guys on Portland are this year because everybody's going to get an opportunity. Yeah, I think he's an intriguing role player for them last year. I think it was like 7.5 a game. But yeah, we'll see. I think he could have a career as a role man for them. I think it's good that he's getting opportunities. Efficiency looks really good for what I'm seeing. So hopefully he keeps that up. But yeah, I think, he's only 22 years old still. So he's a young guy.
Yeah, absolutely. So another guy, like I think Jaylen Green, he should.
That's what I was going to say.
I mean, Houston's going to end up trying to win this year, and he's going to be the engine. And, the NBA offseason's funny. It's a little different from the NFL where obviously the NFL, like everybody wants to know what their guys are doing in the offseason, but the NBA, it's all in on the gym culture. Like, holy crap, did you see what that guy did, that folding chair? Oh my gosh. That's kind of the NBA offseason culture. And Jaylen Green right now is probably the MVP of offseason highlight videos, So hopefully it's not the Ben Simmons curse where it's like, oh my gosh, look, Ben Simmons is shooting now.
He's in the gym.
Yeah, he's in the gym.
Yearly Ben Simmons gym picks.
Yeah, so Jaylen Green's getting a lot of off-season gym highlight videos, so we'll see if it's baloney or real. It better be real.
And Ime Udoka, I think he'll have an impact on him. I thought their coaching was horrible last year with Silas. But, I mean, you even have, I just saw a clip today, Grant Williams was talking about how Udoka was the best coach he had with the Celtics, even better than what he just had this past year. But because he's an analytics coach, like he can do all that stuff, he can create the plays, but he's also a really good players coach, is what Grant Williams was saying. So that will help. And then, maybe his touches will be a little more limited with the guards they have there. You're gonna have Dylan Brooks, who I've talked about before. He's gonna be taking 18 shots a game.
If he takes the ball away from Jaylen Green,
He's going to get
100%. Benched. If he does that, he's getting benched. He's not going on an Ime Udoka team to jack up 18 shots. It's not happening. I swear to Christmas.
I hope he does. I mean, because you're talking about a guy.
I don't want to worry about Houston, but it's not happening.
I think less on Jaylen Green's plate isn't necessarily a bad thing, though.
No,
his usage rate was pretty staggering last year compared to his rookie year, and he just wasn't quite ready. He wasn't quite there. Yeah, so that's not necessarily a bad thing, but you'd probably rather have someone else than Dylan Brooks jacking up him. Although he could do it, man. He's positive. Dylan Brooks knows what goes on in his mind.
He's going to bring, good defense there, but bro, Brooks is at least shooting 15 shots a game.
He's not dude. If he shoots 15 shots a game, they're going to start Tari Easton or Cam Whitmore.
I hope Udoka does that.
Here's the thing. Ime Udoka doesn't take that. Taylor Jenkins is a hype man. Ime Udoka is not going to take that crap. That's the one thing about Udoka that's good. He doesn't take crap. He's not going to let say, "Oh, Dylan Brooks, you play hard. Okay, you can start shooting more." He's going to get benched if he does
Dylan
that.
Brooks heat check.
Udoka doesn't play games, y'all. Obviously, like he
Yeah.
doesn't play games. So
I just think
obviously he played enough games to get off of Boston, but I mean, I'm talking like as a coach, he doesn't play games. So
it's gonna be really fun to see how he handles that dynamic though, because I mean, a guy who was taking 15 shots a game on, you know, the second best team in the West and now is the second highest player on one of the worst teams in basketball. It's gonna be weird, to, see if he actually wants to decrease his shots by himself, or he has to listen to the coaches.
Absolutely. And let's transition. I'm done talking about Dylan Brooks. Okay. So here are my so obviously the rookie seasons are weird because it's very dependent on opportunities. Some really good guys come out of nowhere, second, third, fourth year, just based on pure opportunity. So we're not ranking the guys who we think are the best prospects necessarily, but just the guys that we like the most based on, just what opportunity they get. So Zach, you got a list. Show it.
All right. You want me to go 1 through 10 here?
Sure.
All right. So the top three is the same. I have Wembanyama, Henderson, and then Miller. But then at 4.
Chet a rookie to you?
Chet. Oh, should I go? Yeah, I should probably include Chet. Okay, we'll go. Okay, Chet's gonna be number 2. I'm keeping Wembanyama 1. Then at 4, I went with a Thompson brother, but it's not a man. I'm going to Soar. I just think he's a winning basketball player, and I think he's going to rack up like 2.5 stocks a game with that team. I think he's going to be a highlight machine. I just think he's going to make winning plays constantly. I think he's going to make an all-rookie team. I think he's going to have a great year. I think Jarris Walker, I have at 5, another guy making winning plays with the Pacers. I think he's going to have a big year. I think he'll be a starter, probably not day 1, but really early into the season. Amen. I got Amen Thompson at 6. His role is going to be a lot more limited, even though I think he's better than his brother and better than Walker. It's just the fact that he's playing behind Van Vliet and, guys like Jaylen Green and stuff. And then at number 7, I have a guy who was taken at 16 later in the draft, Keontae George. I think there's a case to have this guy as a starter pretty early on in the season. If I were the Jazz, I would be starting him over, Jordan Clarkson really early and do his career move Jordan Clarkson back to the 6-man role that he was at, when they were competing in the West. And then we got Cam Whitmore at 8, another guy who would be higher, but his role's going to be limited. And then Taylor Hendricks with Utah. He could be a day 1 starter potentially with them. Utah's front court looks really good. And I think he's going to have a big role there as a 3-and-D type guy. That's 10.
Okay, we got some similarities. Hey Theo, do you want to mention a list, or you just want to piggyback?
I don't really have a list. I wasn't able to do too much NBA scouting with the NFL work that I do, so that's not quite my area of expertise. But one guy I might mention would be Grady Dick with the Toronto Raptors, just being on the outside and being a knockdown shooter. He's not going to have a unbelievably high usage rate or anything like that, but can he be really good for his role? I think that he can, and maybe he probably won't.
James doesn't think so.
You don't think so?
Zach loves Grady.
I do.
Here are my top. Okay, so hot take: Victor, Chet, Scoot, Brandon Miller, top 4. I also have Jarris Walker 5. I have Amen Thompson 6 because I think he's going to find a way to end up in the rotation, pretty emphatically, even if he's playing 3. Like, he's going to find ways to get minutes. 7, I had Sir as well. He's going to get opportunities, and his defense is NBA ready. Number 8, I have Keontae George. Really loved what I saw in the Summer League. I think that because Utah doesn't have a pure point guard, he is going to get opportunity even with Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson. And I would be surprised if one of those 2 guys aren't traded this deadline. So I think that Keontae is going to have a great year. And number 9, I'm going to have Derek Lively. Dallas needs a center. Obviously, they got more options, so that's a good thing. But they could really use his dynamic rim protection. Between Holmes, and Powell, they have more options. But I think Lively is going to prove to be the best raw talent. And he's going to really benefit from Luka's playmaking in the pick and roll, and his defense is NBA ready. And number 10, I have Jaime Jaquez from Miami. NBA ready. He's got toughness. He's got IQ. He's got connective playmaking. You can play him 3 to 4 positions. He's just a pure Miami culture tough player. And I just think usually in the NBA, like Denver, Christian Braun, right? Like I think he's kind of the Christian Braun of rookies this year. And I think he's going to be in a playoff rotation in his first year and just be solid. Like obviously I love Cam Whitmore, but he's going to play behind Dylan Brooks and his 18 shots a game, like Zach said. And
20. We'll make it 20. He's shooting 20.
Yeah, Ime Udoka.
He's got to hold off Cam Whitmore, so he's got to really step it up and shoot even more.
He's going to keep Cam Whitmore on the bench.
Yes, he needs to.
And obviously Tari Eason, so that's another thing. And obviously I love Leonard Miller, but he's probably going to be the 9th or 10th man in the rotation, optimistically. So, yeah, I feel good about this top 10. Obviously, Grady Dick, he's another candidate. I just think physically he's going to need some time, getting stronger, things of that nature. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting rookie class.
For sure. It's going to be fun.
Yep. And quick transition. So I got a mock trade I'm going to give you guys, and I just want to hear your take. We're going to start doing this on this podcast more, just like mock trade ideas. And this one I posted last week. And this is something I did with Joel Moran of Pick a Side podcast. So here it is, guys. It's a 3-team trade. So Joel Embiid gets traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers to form a big 3 with Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell. And what does Cleveland give up, you wonder? Evan Mobley, who is a premier young prospect in the league right now. Jarrett Allen. So both centers are out for Joel Embiid. Allen gets sent to Oklahoma City, where they get an established big guy, and they put Chet at the 4. And OKC is sending for Jarrett Allen, Cason Wallace, the number 10 pick in this year's draft, a defensive point guard, and a future first-round pick. Those two things go to Philly. And Philly, in addition, for money purposes, Karis LeVert is dealt to Philly. So 76ers get Evan Mobley, Cason Wallace, Karis LeVert, a future first-round pick. Cleveland gets Joel Embiid, and the Thunder get Jarrett Allen and Damian Jones just for contracts. So, Theo, what do you think?
It would be crazy. Cleveland's rotation is so limited and so tight right now, and like they were only running 6-7 man lineups in the playoffs. So to give up, even if it's Joel Embiid, to give up even 2 starters for 1, like it starts to get really dangerously thin for them. It almost feels like. And obviously Embiid, you worry about his game aging well, even though he's still in his 20s because of all the knee issues that he's had. And Mobley, how long will that last? But they're getting an MVP, and they would have the 2 guards, and that should be pretty well balanced scoring all across the board if this were to happen. And the defense would obviously still be. I don't think it would fall off, even losing guys like Mobley and Jarrett Allen. If you get a guy like Embiid in there as well, he brings all that defensive presence while also being the scorer that Mobley has kind of. I think that he can be a better scorer than he is now, but it has kind of stagnated a little bit in terms of his aggressiveness and kind of his rosy outlook as an offensive big as well. Totally. So, you don't have to worry about that with Embiid at all. It would be a pretty scary team. I would just worry about the depth in Cleveland, and I would worry about, Embiid's longevity if you're giving up a guy like Mobley. But I think it is a fun idea.
The Phoenix of the East.
Yes, right.
What do you think, Zach?
I think I like the idea overall. I mean, I do have some questions, with the timeline in Cleveland. Do they want to push that, or would it make more sense to develop, a guy like Mobley? But for the Sixers, I think I kind of made it clear last show. That would be a great deal, in my opinion, for the Sixers. I think, in my opinion, the process is over. I don't see a path to where that team is going to win a championship right now, especially with Harden wanting out. And with assets, they're going to get back in that type of deal. I think getting a guy like Mobley, who is, in my opinion, going to win a Defensive Player of the Year at least once in his career. I mean, he already finished, I think, top 5 in the award in his second year, which is absolutely nuts. Like, and there's upside to develop his offense in general, but Philly could figure it out and develop their future around cornerstones like Maxey and then Mobley. I think that's a really good start to potential new window that could open up in like 6 years for them. But yeah, for Cleveland, I mean, maybe push all your chips in. You already made the Mitchell trade. Why don't you just go for the championship? I guess. I mean, that is the goal at the end of the day. You're talking about, I think Embiid's like 29 still. You're talking about an MVP type guy. I think that'd be a great, surrounding help, around him with, stars like Donovan Mitchell. Garland was an all-star recently as well. I think that'd be a really fun team, and I think it would make sense for both those teams to do that. And then for the Thunder, I think because the kind of a sub point there, getting Jared Allen would be pretty sweet for them. I think that would be a win for the Thunder because they need a big man like that. I mean, they have Chet, but get a guy that can just block shots, then maybe have Chet be the stretch 4. That'd be pretty sweet for them.
Plus the rim protection between the two would be kind of crazy.
Oh my gosh.
Like Allen, like he saw Mobley, and you get a similar talent defensively next to him. Plus Chet can space the floor. Yeah. So I think the offense is a little better. Yeah.
Another trade for Embiid that I was thinking about that could make sense is to Portland. I mean, we were talking about their rotation of bigs that is a little bit up in the air. Like guys will get a chance to prove themselves, but the odds that you get any kind of like reliable starter, much less an all-star, much less an MVP, is nil. And when you look at the Dame situation and where he wants to be traded and his whole thing, it looks like it might not work out. All he wants to get traded to is Miami, it sounds like, and Miami doesn't really have the pieces to build a trade package worth Dame. So if they can't move Dame, or if that just the two parties can't come to a deal that makes sense for both, maybe they say, well, we're stuck with Dame. We could add someone like Lillard. They have a million young pieces, right? They could trade Scoot. They could trade Anthony Simons. They could trade, whoever they want to trade. And they could make a pretty enticing package for a guy like Embiid. And it would be a pretty big about face to go from we're finally trading Damian Lillard to actually we're getting him the piece that could win him a championship. But if the trade for Lillard, like it really doesn't seem to be going anywhere fast. And if that kind of falls through, I think there's a lot of time for that to happen. They could look to add a second star. And like you said, it could be a good idea for the Sixers to get what they can for Embiid now, because I agree that their window for a championship moving forward is pretty much closed at this point. So that's another trade that I think could potentially end up working out down the road. And then, of course, there's the Knicks.
Yeah.
I think Damian Lillard would quickly forgive Portland if they landed Joel Embiid.
I think so, too. I think he can be loyal for a couple more years if that happens.
Yeah, we could be loyal. Just give me Joel Embiid, okay? Right?
I don't even think he particularly wants to leave now, which is why he's making such a big stink about going nowhere but Miami. I think Miami is really the only place where he's like, well, okay. I think that he really is comfortable in Portland and would be totally fine staying there. I think at this point, there's just so much pressure on him to leave. Where he's like, fine, I'll go to Miami. And then the Portland are like, well, you can't just, they don't have anything to give us or that they will give us. So like, you can't just.
Yeah, he didn't pick a very correct team. He should have picked like the Knicks or something.
Right.
Like a team that has like a bunch of assets.
Yes, but I think that Lillard, personality wise, I think fits well in Miami. I think a lot of NBA players would love to go to Miami. Like Jimmy Butler and Lillard, I think would get along well and everything. I think he's got the appropriate intensity that Jimmy Butler likes, as you Timberwolves fans well know.
I love Jimmy.
But I think that that's something that could potentially, and I don't know exactly what the trade package could look like, but if it got brought up later in the summer, I wouldn't be shocked.
Man, Damian Lillard is just functioning so heartbroken right now. Like,
I really don't think he wants to leave, but like,
I don't either.
Are like, leave, and he's like, he looked around the league and he's like, none of these places look good except Miami. So it's like, that's the only place. And I just don't. If no progress gets made on that deal, eventually it's going to turn back to will Lillard return to the Trailblazers, and I think that's totally on the table right now.
Yeah, and then you got to talk about like, who's going to be traded, because they're not going to run a team with, him, Scoot, and then Simons, and then Sharp. Like one of those guys would be on the out, and it would probably be Simons. But
Hey, Zach,
Embiid incoming. Embiid incoming. He's a
Zach,
trailblazer.
you ready for one of my classic analogies?
Here we go.
Damian Lillard is like that one girl who's with the boyfriend who everybody says is toxic. And they say, "Let him go, honey. Let him go. He's not the one." And then she just gets pissed at the boyfriend for not changing. That is what Damian Lillard is going through right now. So
it's like Colin Cowherd relationship.
No,
book out of the Colin Cowherd relationship analogy playbook. Yes,
I think
that's like once. He averages like one of those a show.
He does.
I said some wild ones. I said a crazy one a couple weeks ago. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, you said one with Riv. I can't remember the one from a few weeks ago, but
what was it?
It was with James Harden. I can't remember exactly.
I think I saw this clip. You were going off on James Harden. I saw it on an Instagram clip, but
it was something about desperation, wasn't it? Something like that. Yeah. Oh yeah, it's something about like maybe you're single and okay, maybe you're single and you want to date somebody. Maybe don't date the girl who's broken up with 30 guys the last year. Maybe that isn't the proper solution. That was Harden because he's just requesting trade demand after trade demand like every 4 weeks. By the way, James Harden got mad at me this week.
Oh yeah, he blocked us.
He blocked all of us. Did you see that critical story he made? Like I've been comfortable for way too long. I'm pretty sure that was referring to my post. I'm not kidding. Because no, think about it. So my first, I think my second sentence on that was he's never comfortable. And he blocks me on all platforms. And then a couple minutes after, apparently, he posts a story and he says, "I've always been comfortable."
Fair. Yeah, if that all happened within a short period of time,
it all happened because I followed him, and then people are sharing me stories, and I was like, I can't see it. What is that? And they're like, "Oh, it's a James Harden story." It's like, "Oh, what does it say?" And I saw his story earlier that day, and then he goes or I saw his post or whatever, and then he says "I've always been comfortable. Now it's time to get uncomfortable." And I was
think
like,
that's valid.
Crazy.
If that happened to me, I would also think that it was all about me, and I think that's okay. Maybe it's delusional, but I would also think it's all about me. I
don't think it's delusional though. Why did he
I don't think it is either. I think that you might be onto something.
He literally basically quoted something I said on that post and blocked me right before it.
Yeah, that's fair. Are you the one that KD responded to about the Rodgers comp? Was that you?
Oh yeah. He said I'm way too emotional, and I would get upset if he was wrong. If he was wrong, I'd be upset. But I was like,
I don't think you were wrong though about it.
I think it's a pretty good comp, Rodgers to KD across sports.
Yeah.
I think the lesson is if you want star attention, just make the most whack Photoshop you can.
Yeah.
Because
he photoshopped into a Shanghai shirt, James Harden.
I see.
I think that's why it was blocked.
And Kevin Durant, I photoshopped Aaron Rodgers' head on him. So
that's not so bad.
No, but it stands out, right?
Yeah, so
obviously I didn't Photoshop a bikini on him, but I photoshopped Aaron Rodgers' head, then I photoshopped a Chinese Basketball Association jersey on the other.
You just got to get Kyrie and have the real Nets big three. They may never have won a ring together, but collectively they can have all gotten mad at Wilder Adams at some point.
Oh my gosh, that would be the best.
The big three.
That's the next goal. You guys, right after the show, we have to text and make a plan on what Photoshop I make to offend Kyrie.
It shouldn't be too hard.
Shouldn't be too hard.
In fact, that quip enough may have been enough to do it. So
he's watching right now.
He's watching right now.
Gosh, he might be. But all right. Plus, this isn't even out yet from the moment we're recording. I don't know if he's hacking into stuff now, but he's creative. I don't know the Matrix stuff he talks about. Okay, next topic. Because I love James Harden, but we got to move on. Directionless NBA teams. So there's some NBA teams that have no idea what they want to do. They think they want to win, then they make a tanking move, then they want to win, and then they kind of back out of it. And then it's okay, guys, you're average as hell. What's going on? Right? So we're doing a draft, so we do rankings a lot, but this time we're going to try to steal Bill Simmons' idea of drafting everything, and we are going to. I'm not even going to hide it. We're stealing this idea from Bill Simmons, and I love Bill Simmons. So we're just going to each have 2 draft picks, and we're going to draft the most directionless teams in the NBA. So only 6 teams are mentioned. Who wants the number 1 overall pick?
I think there's a Victor Wembanyama level prospect of directionless team out there. So
I think we all know which team that
I
is.
agree. There's 2. I think there's one main one, but there's another that's really bad.
The first one that comes to mind for me, I'm taking over the podcast, and I'm going to take the first pick. I'm going to take Atlanta. I don't know if that's who you guys were thinking of, but to me, to me, like what are they really? There was a rumor that they might trade Trae Young. They obviously just moved head coaches. They traded away John Collins. They brought in DeJounte Murray, which is a move that like made them better, but didn't really move me. I just don't exactly know what is happening here besides like first round playoff exit. I think at some point you need to get a better best player than Trae Young. And they don't have a great avenue to do that. Obviously, they've got some nice pieces. The center with the long name from USC, I can't remember off the top of my head. I really like him, and I do like Trae Young, but for me, it's just it's been like this for a long time now, where it's like I just cannot quite see them as championship contenders, but they're certainly not. They're trying, like they've made some big trades for all-stars, and they've got a guy who is their superstar and an all-star, and I'm surprised that you guys didn't have them I'm surprised that it elicited.
They're my number 3.
I thought we all had the same team on mind, and then he goes Atlanta. I'm like, whoa, which it's not bad.
But as long as you have them at number 3 and agree that they're somewhat directionless, and I'm not barking up the wrong tree here.
I'll leak it. They're 4th on my draft board.
Fair. I did take Brandon Miller over Scoot. Then who's your pick?
Zach, you go.
I'll just take the biggest one of all, in my opinion. The Chicago Bulls, man.
What?
Victor fell to 2, man.
What are the Chicago Bulls doing? You have a 34-year-old DeMar DeRozan who is on the last year of his deal. Trade him now. This team doesn't have upside at all, in my opinion. Lonzo Ball is out for the year, it seems like. Zach LaVine, he has dealt with injuries over the course of time, but he's a number 2 option. This team doesn't have a number 1 option on the team. You just played Vucevic, $20 million, and Patrick Williams doesn't really look like a great number 4 overall pick. Like, can they finally commit to tanking like they should be? Because there's no path to getting a number 1 player on this team that can, lead you to a championship. And there's really no path of this team to be great in the East again. Like, they were the 1 seed for a while, but then they lost Lonzo Ball and all went downhill from then. And I don't see a path to getting better than that. I don't see a path to DeMar getting back to the level he was at that point. Like, they're pushing all their chips into LaVine and DeMar, who are, DeMar's a lot older now, and the supporting cast behind that just isn't that great, Yeah,
I agree. I probably should have picked them over the Hawks. The only thing I could see is like they're probably because it's such a desperate situation, they're probably more likely to make some trades before the deadline and embrace the tanking than the Hawks are. But yeah, you're right that they better, because right now it's absolutely driftless. Yeah.
One underrated topic, they have Portland's 2024 pick protected. It's like it's deeply protected, but they do have some draft control of other teams in the future. So, they're kind of off of the Nikola Vucevic trade draft pick haul thing. So now they have control of their own destiny now. So they should be able to, they want to start moving people eventually. Like, it's not a hard situation to get out of. Obviously, the Lonzo Ball contract is what it is, but there's only 2 more years of it. And, they got Patrick Williams, they got Kobe White and Ayo Dosunmu. Like, wouldn't call that a great young core, but they're bodies that
it's a bunch of role players.
They're 98.6 degree bodies. So, they're there, and they can do something. But yeah, they have no idea what they're doing. Like, what was that Nikola Vucevic extension? Like, I get like holding on to an asset.
That was weird. That was very weird.
Like, holding on to an asset that's the only
3 years though.
Right.
3 years of Nikola Vucevic. Like, I feel so bad for Chicago fans. Like, imagine like convincing yourself of a Nikola Vucevic anchored paint defense with Zach LaVine and DeMar DeRozan floating around the perimeter. Oh my gosh, that is a monstrosity on defense. So, yeah, I wouldn't wish that on my worst enemy. So, okay, that's so Victor fell to 2. Brandon Miller went 1, but that's both
you got Scoot on the board right now. You better take it.
With the 3rd pick in the 2023 Directionless, Clueless, borderline stupid sometimes NBA team draft, the Wilder Adams select the Toronto Raptors. I love Masai Ujiri. I met him in February. He's a great guy. Great guy. And he's tall, man. I did not think he was 6'6". He is every bit of 6'6". And he's a very good guy, like I said. I'm only saying that because I got to be honest about the Raptors. I don't even think this is a Masai Ujiri problem. It's probably an ownership problem. But this team since 2019 has no idea what it's doing. Like outside the Scotty Barnes draft pick in 2021, I haven't seen many great things happen. Like last year at the deadline, bottom 7 record for the second to last 3 years, right? Feels like a good time with OG Anunoby peaking as an asset, Fred still on your team, Pascal with 2 years left on his deal. Feels like a peak time to start trading guys, right? Before Fred's gone, before Pascal's value tanks because it's only 1 more year on his deal. Instead of dealing assets leaning towards Scotty Barnes, what do? They go in dealing a future first-round pick for Jakob Poeltl. And in free agency, they let Fred VanVleet go for nothing. So, what's the goal? What's going on here? What are you trying to do? It's a very confused team that feels like they're set up to be average until anything changes. And likely this is going to end up, I'm just guessing, in a Pascal Siakam trade because he and Barnes are very redundant. And now Siakam's on a 1-year deal instead of a 2-year deal. And historically, you can look at the Jimmy Butler trade. You can look at, there's multiple examples that come. I can't. I had another one that was really good, but I know the Jimmy Butler one for sure. 1-year deal trades usually don't end up giving you a ton, even for a star. So, the Kyrie Irving one, this deadline, that was one. So, yeah, the Raptors haven't done great with asset management, and now they're kind of stuck in the middle. So, it's a 3-player draft this year.
Yeah, and the way they handled Nick Nurse's firing seemed a bit messy as well, and like everything going into what their coaching staff looks like now. Yeah, I agree that it doesn't really like they've got some nice young players, but in terms of like where they stand right now, it's pretty tough to see the vision.
Yeah. And they have so much like positional redundancy. Like you kind of mentioned, like you have 3 power forward like guys starting, and then you have Jakob Poeltl, who's not a floor spacer at center. Like there's just not a lot of, quick guard talent on this team. It's a lot of like big forwards, and it hasn't worked. And, you're gonna have to move off those pieces at some point because, they got 4 guys in their lineup that are like 6'9" plus, and none of them are like elite shooters. So the half court offense is always gonna suck with those 4 on the court, most likely. And I just don't see the path to, win a championship with those guys.
They got Grady Dick, though.
All right, they're good.
How do you pronounce? Is it Masai Ujiri?
Masai Ujiri.
I watched his press conference, and he said that the last thing Nick Nurse told him leaving the building was "Good luck with those guys." So that's probably not a great thing to hear.
Yeah, it's a funky situation. Masai is such a good GM historically that, I just feel like his strings are being pulled by somebody else. Like this doesn't feel like a Masai Ujiri asset management situation to me.
Yeah,
this
the
feels
owners
like
probably don't want to they probably don't want to tank. Like they want to sell tickets.
Toronto hasn't been bad in a very long time. They're like the Vikings, man. They're terrified of being bad, man. And they do that, and they're just average all the time. That's
really the Saints. In the NFL, that's the New Orleans Saints more than any other team.
New Orleans Saints. Yeah, because they got a championship. We don't. That's basically what.
Yeah, fair enough. And I think when you look at how the team is built, it's kind of a very specific type of player, like you mentioned. Like they're all kind of in that 6'9" range. None of them are too small or too big, and that could have been something that you were getting those guys for Nick Nurse because those are the types of players that he liked to play with. And now he's gone, and you're left with kind of this specialized lineup that may not be appealing for other systems or other coaches potentially.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's a
it's weird.
weird offense. It's so weird.
It's really bizarre.
It's
Like-
not watchable. It's
The
just not.
idea of, you know, versatile 6'9" forwards is great until you realize the 6'9" forwards you acquired can't really shoot or create in the half court.
Yeah.
It just becomes like a group of Swiss Army knives that don't do anything when it comes to actually winning against stars in the NBA.
Right.
You know, like OKC is doing it right because they're doing a very similar philosophy, but their guys can shoot, you know, and that's the bigger difference. You know,
and they've got a 7-footer out there. You
Yeah,
know,
they
like
got a-
there is someone there to match up with a Jokic who
Yeah.
is gigantic, right? It's like
who does the
sometimes
same
size,
things as the 6'9" guys, right?
right.
So-
So you need size. Like if someone out there is just bigger than all your guys, like it's nice to have someone really big to throw at them. And it's like the Raptors just they don't have that. It's very bizarre, unless I'm forgetting somebody. But
Yeah. I mean, historically in the NBA, I mean, historically size matters. Like you need a 7-foot center, right? So I know people like thought for like 5 years, like, oh no, it's a 6'1" guard. That's the future of the league. That was always stupid. It was always about like the center catching up with the skill of the NBA. That was always going to inevitably happen. And now we're starting to see it every year. Like Evan Mobley in 2021, Chet in 2022, Victor 2023.
Aaron Bradshaw 2024.
Hey, you ruined my thunder, Zach. You're off the show. AD Mira 2024.
No, Bradshaw.
Aaron Bradshaw, get out of my face. AD Mira.
they
Bradshaw's
act like
nice,
two
though.
legends can't
Right.
coexist here, guys.
Huh?
Yeah, come on, James.
It could be
Wait,
two,
what?
there's enough room for two. No,
Come on.
No, that was my moment, and Zach ruined my day.
I didn't think you were. I think
Fair.
I should have. We were talking about
I
Mara before
only
the
needed
show.
a 5-second moment there. I only needed a 5-second moment, and Zach goes right into it.
That's just who I am. You know.
He's always been selfish. I mean, like I don't know how I run the show with him. It's been bizarre. But
Are we snaking or am I up again?
you're oh yeah, we still have draft picks. Okay, pick 4, right?
Mm-hmm.
I almost moved it. I almost changed topics.
Gosh,
Still
get
got
a new host
3
on
more
the show,
picks to
man.
go.
I might
Let's get
just end the show
Bladen.
right now, actually. No, okay. Yeah, 4th pick, Theo.
This is where it gets really rough to me.
It gets rougher after this. I might take a team I'm kind of out on ever winning anything, and they're still trying, is the Clippers. This might be a take that is a little that could age poorly because they still do have Paul George. They still have Kawhi Leonard.
Mhm.
That is a dangerous duo. And, you know, Leonard in his short stint in the playoffs this year was playing incredible basketball and was reminding everybody like why he has a stake to be the best player in the league. Like he was cooking the Suns. I mean, he was lights out, but then he got hurt again. And that's just how it's been with these guys every single year since they've joined. And it just, the cards haven't aligned to the stars, or the cards haven't fallen, and however that saying goes, the stars haven't aligned for them. And at this point, with these injury prone guys getting up there in age, I just don't know if it's ever really going to happen that they make a run out of the West and into the NBA finals, let alone winning it.
Mm-hmm.
But, you know, they couldn't be farther from a rebuild either. You know, they've got some young players, you know, Terrence Mann, but, you know, he's already 26. It's not like there's really anybody besides maybe Bones Highland, Amir
Mhm.
Coffey. Like they don't really have any young players that really, really move you. And at this point, it kind of feels like their championship window has passed.
Yeah.
So they're a team that right now just kind of feels like they're holding on to hope for something that'll never happen.
Good take. I had them
That's a
3.
good point.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Zach, pick 5.
This is like tough because I feel like you can argue that maybe these teams aren't that directionless, but we'll go with probably the Pelicans, I guess. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of it is up to, you know, what they do with Zion going forward. Like, is this his last year where you're giving him a chance to be the guy there? Because if he comes back and has another 30-game season, are you moving forward with Zion Williamson? Like, that's
Are you
what my
stuck with
question
him?
is. Yeah. Like, what's gonna happen there? I think it's really up to what Zion does with this team. Because if Zion's healthy and like they were the 1 seed for a solid portion of last year, and Zion was healthy last year. Like he was a top 10 player in basketball before he got hurt, and then he gets hurt, and then he's just sitting there. I don't know. I think it's them, and we'll see what James. I have one more team, but I'll see what James does.
Yeah, Zion's a good pick, man. I mean,
We'll just say we can label it Zion's directionless.
It kind of is. It kind of
It
is
kind
just
of
like
is
that.
him.
It's like I don't think they know what they want to do. I mean, people said pretty emphatically that they tried to move him or like they expected him to get moved by the draft. And I don't think reporters just make stuff like that up. Even when things like that get
There's something
reported,
there.
right? When things like that get reported and they don't happen, it's not because the reporter just sat at their computer and was like, I'm just gonna say some crap about whatever. Like they heard something
Yeah,
and they felt good enough
Damian
about
Lillard's in Orlando Magic.
right. That is me doing that. But even then, someone told me it. It's just a
Yeah,
random Twitter guy who heard it from his cousin.
sources
Um,
tell me. Don't ask the source.
So yeah, I think that they really seriously consider dealing with him, and if they're considering dealing him, like it kind of tells you that they don't know, and they didn't. It's like they don't know what to do really. Like I'm sure they would not. They'd rather not be in this position, but they are, and yeah.
Yeah, totally. I mean, it's like the only situation today where I don't blame the front office for being directionless.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of you had
the
to take
player.
him number one. Yeah, you had to take him number one. It's not like
I had to extend him.
They had to extend him. They I thought the Brandon Ingram, they got good stuff from the AD trade. Like
Yeah.
really, like Ingram isn't a super duper star, but he was good and all, and
He's
everything.
a really good
So,
player.
Herb
Number
Jones,
2.
I like their coach a lot. Like you said, there's a third year breakout candidate on the team. Like they should be really good. It's just like Zion is totally up in the air, and it's tough to have a distinct direction when your superstar is so inconsistent. So I think it's a decent take. Yeah.
What you acquire in a hypothetical Zion Williamson trade could also really influence what path you're going. Like there were those Scoot Henderson ideas that were floating around the draft. Like if you did that, you're not trying to contend anytime soon. But maybe it's like for Zion and stuff for Dame, then you're trying to contend, right? Like the direction of this team would go many different directions based on what you want for Zion and what you can possibly get. So, all right. So, yeah, these are good picks. And with the last pick on the irrelevant team draft, and there's a lot of honorable mentions. Like there's like 10 teams you could make a case for. But I would say the last team I am going to go with, man, this is hard. You guys got all of my top 5 teams. The Brooklyn Nets.
That's who I was gonna.
Yeah, I'll go Brooklyn, and
also kind of not their fault. I mean, maybe it is a little bit trying to build the big three and everything, and that mix of personalities, but
it's not the new front office's fault, really.
Right.
So, yeah, it's interesting. They got great trade for Mikal Bridges and picks, right? Obviously, like this, the NBA is like it has a drought of 3-and-D wings, and like the Nets are hoarding all of them. So it's kind of a weird situation there, but it's pretty funny actually. It's maybe the funniest roster in the NBA. Like if you think of the funniest teams in the NBA, I think Brooklyn might be one. They're just weird.
It's a weird, yeah.
But
Ben Simmons there.
Yeah, Ben Simmons is floating around there too. Speaking of drama, and like I feel like this team won't suck going forward because they're defensive minded, they're lengthy, they're tough, they have a 20-point per game score. Like this is a team that's going to win minimum 38 games if they're healthy, right?
Yeah.
But they could also win 48. It's going to be in that range because Claxton and Bridges, their skill sets are way too high in terms of floor. And you have guys like Dinwiddie who can give you buckets, right? And all, like I said, all the 3-and-D wings you could ever want. So now you got to figure out, like, are we just going to stick with this or are we trying to get a star? And I think the clear path here is going after a Damian Lillard type. I think that would be a fun fit. But
go after KD or Harden. I heard he's available.
Ooh, James Harden to the Nets. That would be Can you imagine? Gosh, James
That'd be
Harden on the
hilarious.
Nets, Jimmy Butler on the Timberwolves, man. Those would be cool scenarios, right? Can you imagine Jimmy Butler next to Cat, man?
And
I
Andrew
think
Wiggins,
Oh, well,
dude.
Andrew Wiggins is a
Oh my
Warrior now.
gosh. Oh yeah, that's right. Forgot about that.
But speaking back to Brooklyn, like, okay, if you don't go for a star, you're stuck in mediocrity. Do you
Yep.
really want to rebuild? Because you have some good young players who are ascending right now, right? So they should the path should be obvious that they are a candidate to go after the next star point guard available, Damian Lillard. But yeah, we'll see. I think
Yeah.
they're slightly directionless. Slightly. It's not terrible, but they're slightly.
Yeah, I would say if I was them, I think I'd just let this ride and just see what you have over the course of a season. Like you just traded away the big three and you got all of these things, and you're not like you're pretty sure we did get some idea towards the end of how they
Yeah.
all fit together. But like how could it look over the course of a season and then maybe go from there? It feels a little bit weird to me to get burned trading for all these stars, and then when you trade him away, the new core looks all right. And really, before they traded for all the stars, when they had D'Lo and the team that was, so beloved and high energy, and like I think a lot of Nets fans probably reminisce about the days before they got all the big stars and before they traded away all the role players for high end talent.
Mhm.
And now you're kind of in a situation where the vibes are good. Mikal Bridges and Cam Johnson are, an awesome pair. Like, is there a trade to make them like win the East? Maybe. I mean, the Heat just won the East. So yeah, I could definitely see them striking, but it would also be attractive to me to maybe just like calm down for a year, see what you have. You think that all of these assets could even appreciate in value
Yeah.
if you gave them time and gave them, the minutes to really develop, or not develop, but cement themselves as like really high end starters. So maybe they could be worth more in the middle of the season. So that's the direction I would go in if I was them. But yeah, it's not, there's a bunch of different routes they could go down for sure.
Do you guys want another analogy?
Yes.
Let's hear it.
More than anything.
Okay. Have you ever gone to a yard sale and all these things are so cheap and you're just like, man, I don't need any of this stuff. I'm just gonna buy it. Like, I got 50 bucks to burn. I'm just gonna steal everything I can here if possible. And you go home and you have I don't know, all these appliances. Maybe you have stuff that you can hang on a refrigerator, or maybe you have random garden. Here's a better one. Maybe you got all these gardening products that you got at a yard sale for 50 bucks, and you come home and you realize the problem is you don't have a garden. That's the only problem, right? Like, they don't have a star, but they have all the materials you need around the star, right? They got you got the shovels, they got, they even got some gloves, they got all this stuff, but they just don't have a garden. That's the only problem. They just need to find a damn garden and then they're good. That's what they got.
It's an awesome supporting cast. And it's centered around Cam and Mikal, which was a supporting cast that got, Booker and those guys to the finals a couple years ago. So if you could find a Booker somewhere without giving up anybody, but obviously that's very difficult, and you may just want to hope that one of the young guys develops into something close to that rather than trading everything away, because I don't know. I just think it's a little bit okay to be directionless for a year. You don't always need to be superstar window. Like, you have to win the finals or you have to get the number 1 overall pick. It doesn't have to be that every single year. You can have a year where you're like, I think we've got a good team. We're going to learn a lot about ourselves. We're going to be able to get a direction going forward. But for now, let's just see what we have. We have the guys to compete to potentially make the playoffs in the East for sure. And that's a decent spot to be. So I don't think they need to make any move to make a clear direction towards the very top or the very bottom. Right now, they're solidly in the middle. And I think that's it's fine. It's totally fine. Yeah, they tried all the high-end star stuff. It didn't work. So I think it's okay to take a breather for a few years and then maybe create a new plan. But you don't have to do it just to do it.
You don't have to be single. You don't have to date all the time. You could be single for
You're
a year.
right.
Right?
You can. You can be a You can have the tools and plan for the garden. Like you can be prepared or something.
Man, call the coward. I got to send him my reel one of these days, man.
You guys just got to riff back
I'm
and
proud.
forth.
Can you just imagine just like us just like writing analogies just to prepare? Maybe that's
You need
my
a
internship
coffee
after
table
college.
book.
Maybe at FS1, I'm just gonna write him just analogies that he could put on the show.
Yeah,
That'd be a
ghost
good
right.
job. Good first
Maybe
job.
that's what he has.
Honestly,
Anyway,
you might. Like, you never know what these guys have. But okay, last topic of the show. We are giving the floor to Zach. So, who would you rather build around? And I have no idea who he's mentioning here, who the field is going to be versus. But Zach, your show.
So we're gonna stick with the segment of, the topic of 2023 draft. We went with Scoot Henderson before. We're gonna go with our top pick. We're going with Victor Wembanyama. There's been some posts I've seen around the internet recently. I've disagreed personally with some players that he's been put over, and I just want to get your guys' perspective on this as well. So we're gonna start this off with James. Who would you rather have, Victor Wembanyama or Jason Tatum?
I would go Victor Wembanyama. And I know he hasn't played a minute in the NBA, but he is the best prospect I think ever. And I love I was sold on Victor in like January when I really started to read about just his mental wiring and hear him talk. He just has, like when someone walks in the room and you just kind of get the feeling that they're different, like this is just not a normal guy. Victor has a wisdom and a discipline to him on top of just being a 7'5" droid that there's something different about it. So I would lean Victor, but I know how crazy it sounds picking, a rookie versus a guy who just averaged 30. But yeah.
Yeah, it's a super tough question. My first instinct is probably to lean Wembanyama just because I think of the prototypes who are the most valuable players in the league right now. And you've got the last MVPs, Giannis, you've got Jokic, and you've got Embiid. I think that without a doubt, you could also say Curry, I think is in this conversation, definitely. Luka also maybe as well. But right now, it seems to be that the three most valuable players in the league are the bigs who also give you elite offensive on the other end and defensive at the same time. And of any player prototype that I could add, I think, Tatum is as good of a wing as there is in the league. And he's obviously incredible, fantastic. But I would rather build my team around a two-way big man like Wembanyama rather than an elite wing like Tatum at this point. I think that that's what the trends show, and maybe that's just the nature of how talent is in the league right now. But I just like Wembanyama's like archetype as a player more than Tatum. Maybe he never gets to as good of a big as Tatum is as a wing. Like Tatum is a really, really, really good wing. But I'd just rather have the big. I'd rather have the center who can do everything that Wembanyama can do. And he's younger. You'd get more years. And I really do think that Wembanyama is going to be, easy all-star. So you disagree though? You said that you see the names that you disagree putting Wembanyama over. So this is a tough one. Who would you go with?
I think I'm fine if people go Victor here. I'm not really. Wasn't the player. I'm taking Tatum though, probably because he's a guy that I've seen it already from him. I've seen that he can be the best player on a championship like team. So I think more of a confident bet on that end. And he's still 25 years old. I think he's going to get better. I think he's going to continue to develop. I think longevity wise, it's probably better to bet on him as well. Although I'm definitely lower on the concerns when it comes to injuries. When we talk about Victor, I believe in him to stay healthier more. But I would take Tatum here probably just by a slight bit. But I think somebody could probably convince me to take Victor.
If he comes in the NBA and drops 30 in his debut, you're changing your mind. I'll say that.
Well,
is it fair?
In his summer league debut,
fair.
he was 2 for 15. You saw some of the world, you saw the world where Wembanyama isn't like better than Tatum, better than all these best in the league, like all the things that he's supposed to be in the summer league. I thought he'd was fine like the next week and everything, and I'm not
Yeah.
too concerned about like one shaky summer league performance. But it was kind of important to like get a glimpse of like what the bad side of Wembanyama is, which is maybe he can dribble for a big, but you don't want him backing like being
you don't
an
want to play like
ISO
a
and
guard.
backing. Right. You don't actually want him doing that, and he has to like find his role, and I think he will. But I think that was an important game just because it was the first maybe negative thing that anybody has ever seen about Victor Wembanyama.
Yeah.
Because nobody's seen him except YouTube highlights. Like he's not
right.
a perfect
And it's and just the whole draft prospect being like, this guy's amazing, this guy's amazing, this guy's amazing. So like to see him exhibit any kind of weakness was like, I don't want to say it's refreshing. That sounds like hate, but I honestly think even Wembanyama probably thought it was refreshing to be like not anointed as like the next Hakeem Olajuwon, you know, for at least one night. Or it would be a disappointment if he's Hakeem Olajuwon.
Did you not hear? Yeah. That's what like. Gosh, who was the guy who said that?
Broussard said that, I believe. He said it would be a disappointment if he was Hakeem Olajuwon.
That's crazy.
That's
extreme. That's one of the craziest
like
things.
MVP and Finals MVP,
like first ballot Hall of Famer, like one of the greatest
crazy.
season in NBA history when he won basically everything there is to win. No, that's
LeBron too.
So like in film, if there's like this acting prodigy and someone tells them, if you're the next James Dean, you're a failure. You know, like, it's a wild. That was a wild thing I heard. That was crazy.
That was a crazy tweet. That was a really insane one.
If you really want to say something crazy, I had a tweet the other day that all I said was Luka was my MVP, and I think I'm at like 150,000 views of people just crapping on me because they're like, "Oh, this happens every single year," and I'm like, I'm not sure if I've ever picked it before. Maybe I have. I don't think I have for the last couple of years at least. Like it was weird.
Everybody just assumes that because that's what that's kind of what's been happening. You know, like I think I picked him to win MVP like 3 years ago. Even like that's the thing that's been happening every single year and just never happens.
I do this with
for a while.
24. He's 24. Like,
yeah,
is it really a hot take to pick a 24-year-old who averaged 33, 9 and 9? Like, how is that a dumb take?
Yeah,
I always pick Myles Garrett to win Defensive Player of the Year in the NFL. He's never won one, but he's so good. Like he's like at one point in his career, it can happen. Like it should happen. It's going. So if you pick him every single year, you're going to be dead on one year. And I think that's kind of the same thing with Luka. Is like he's so good and he's still so young. Like you said, he could not win it for 2 more years. And like, could it happen 3 years from now? I think it absolutely could, you know? So like you can keep picking him. Luka is never going to be a bad take. You know, he's an elite player. He's a top 10 player very, very easily. So and the team sucks. So if they're any good, like it's not a deep team. It's him and Kyrie balling out.
They got better
together.
though.
So it's like
this summer.
They did, but it's not a team that's so stacked that you couldn't say that he carried it, you know? So if they're really good, it'll probably be because of, you know, Luka and Kyrie, but mostly Luka.
For sure.
All right. I got the second guy ready. Victor Wembanyama or Anthony Edwards, James. This one's easy for me.
This one's easier than the last one, I think.
I'll say this. I would take, these are my 2 favorite young prospects in the league. I would actually take their long-term longevity over Luka. That's a hot take. But I'm going Victor. Very close. Very close. But I don't know, man. I just think Victor's going to put it together. And you're putting together a 7'5" guy who has all those skills and who can completely, I think what makes him stand out, he can completely change the game protecting the rim. But like I said, these are the 2 premier young prospects in the league long term. Like if you're talking about, I have to build an entire personality around my franchise, these are the 2 guys I would look to build around because their archetypes are the ones that win the most. Because historically, dynasties are ran by 2-way wings and elite bigs. That's just how it always has been. And these guys are top notch in terms of maturity for their age, and they have unbelievable 2-way upsides. So those are the 2 top guys for me, but I'm just going to lean Victor here because I want to say Ant, but then I don't feel right saying Ant, so I have to say Victor. Does that make sense?
Gotta go with your gut. I also say Victor. I mean, if I set him for Tatum is this established like MVP candidate. I don't think Edwards is quite broken out, but how old is Edwards? Like, is he
21.
22? Oh my God, is he still 21?
Yeah.
Yeah, he
Okay,
turns
I thought he
22
was.
next month.
He's going to be good.
Okay, I thought he was like 22 or 23. That's my fault in not knowing ball. That is really, really young, isn't it? I'd still
Yeah.
take Victor though. I really would. I think that he's such a unicorn, and like I said, it's so easy for these bigs to just absolutely stuff the stat sheet on both sides. And when you look at the efficiency ranks, it's always those big three that I already mentioned, and I think Wembanyama could be right up there with them. I think that Edwards would have to be even more of an outlier at his position to get to that level of value. And I think I'd take Wemby.
I'm making this not a strikeout again. I'm going Ant. I think I believe in his upside so much. And I mean, you're talking about a guy who at 21 years old was labeled by Bruce Brown like the toughest player that Nuggets team played in the postseason. I mean, he averaged 31, 5, and 5 this
He was
postseason.
sick.
And
He's going to be an all-timer.
he was one of the best defensive players in the first round too. I think he averaged 2 blocks and 2 steals a game. I mean, he has the killer instinct. He has the leadership right now. He's not even 2 years older. Like, I just think he's on another level as an athlete, especially too. Like, and compared to like almost everybody in the NBA. I mean, he was voted the 3rd most athletic player in basketball in 2021, like before his second year even started. Like, I think he's going to he has upside to be one maybe the best player in basketball someday.
Yeah, he
Someday
does.
too,
Sure.
with Victor.
Sure.
And I take the bet long term too, like, because I do consider longevity. That's a big thing for me. I know it's not for some people, but I do trust him, in his 35-year-old season compared to what Victor will look like at that point too. So I just think he'll have a longer and probably better NBA career is what I'm trying to say.
We're talking about age 35. Zach, do
Yeah.
you realize you're going to be 32 years old when that happens?
Dude, I was thinking about the other day. I'm actually going to be older than a draft pick this upcoming year for the first time in my life.
We're talking about the season in which we might have children by then.
Yeah.
How old are you guys? What?
I'm 20.
20.
I just turned 18.
Okay, yeah. It's fun to be older than the draft prospects. It's
I
Penei Sewell
yet to
was
experience that.
Penei Sewell, I always remember as being the first draft prospect in the NFL to Google and be like, "Oh man, I'm older than that guy." That's weird. That was in 2020. Yeah. But I would say this about Anthony Edwards, though. He hasn't quite put it all in his 3rd season, I would say, at least from an efficiency standpoint. He hasn't quite put it together as one of the top guys in the league yet, I would say.
Yeah, not
correct?
Yet. Yeah. I think a lot of that was product to I think his first month was not. I know James knows that too. His first month, I think that was a big wreck. But I mean, he was being asked. I mean, he's the best player on the team for sure, but he was being asked to be the number 1 option throughout the whole year, especially with Cat missing over 50 games. So his workload was a little different. The spacing was a little off too, but yeah, his efficiency, I mean, it would have looked a lot better this year, but he really implemented his 17-foot jumper this year into his game. He was taking a lot of, I hate those shots so much. Like, he makes them at a fine rate, but just in general, it's such an inefficient shot. Just take a 3-man. Like, I don't like jumpers. I think they're like the most inefficient shot in basketball because it's not you're not getting as many points as a 3, but it's almost the same length as a 3-point shot. So
you have to hit them though. You have to hit them because the NBA defenses are literally designed to take away the paint or the 3-point shot. If you can't hit a mid-range shot, that's why guys like Harden aren't the same in the playoffs a lot of the time. Because James Harden, as analytically godly he's been, he doesn't have a lot of a middle game. The middle game matters. If you can master the middle game, that's when you become unstoppable. It's the problem when it becomes your game. It has to be you're giving me this shot, I'm going to make it.
It has to be multiple things. It can't be you can't be Carmelo Anthony and have the jump shot but not threaten the rim. You have to have everything, and it's kind of
you're giving me the shot. You're giving me this because you can't stop me at the rim and that 3-point line. Okay, I'll make this 52% of the time. That's when you're
Right.
unstoppable.
You have to be efficient from 3, you have to be efficient at the rim, and then, like, once those things come, you can add the jump shot and be
Yeah.
unstoppable, and I
Yeah.
think that's where it becomes valuable because those are the shots that they give you, and you can kind of if you can get to them and hit them, um, yeah, it really stresses the defense because then what do you do? That's not what your defense is designed to stop, and they're hitting it. So, yeah, I yes, I would rather have Wemby, I guess, is just my thing, and that's I'd
I
rather have
agree.
Wemby than just about anybody.
I agree. And I'm going to add, like, to the Ant point that, I mean, he's 21 and I think he had like 6 percentile in terms of shot quality last year. And
Oh
his
yeah, it
true
was
shooting
horrible.
was 57%, which is good. So
Mhm.
he was efficient for a 21-year-old and he had just insane low quality in terms of shot selection and spacing. So that just feels like a foundation that's
Yeah,
going to add
that's a
up that
good point. That's
he's
good
going to be
context to add.
efficient as a scorer as he gets older. Oh, and speaking of Penny Sewell, do you know Joe Alt? You heard of him, Theo, right?
Yeah, from Notre Dame.
Yeah.
He's
Uh,
real good.
I played football with him in middle school
Oh,
for a couple.
really?
Yeah.
I watched him. I watched him play Miles Murphy versus Clemson for the scouting this year, and he did a fantastic job on Miles Murphy, and I was like, "Yeah, I see the vision." Yeah, Joe Alt, yeah.
You know what's funny? I looked at a 2024 mock draft, and I know this won't happen because Caleb Williams is in the draft. But I remember like not knowing like anything about the mock draft, and the first website I saw had Joel as the #1 overall pick, and I didn't even know he played college football. I
That's
was like,
crazy. I
and I
would
was like,
be yeah.
I didn't like I was friends with him in middle school, a little bit of high school, but he was a 3-star prospect. I wasn't
Mhm.
thinking he was going to be right like
That
so
dude.
I'm like on it and I'm
Yeah.
like, is that the Joel that I'm thinking of? And then I'm looking up and I go on Instagram and I'm like, holy crap. So then I text him like, dude, what the hell? You're the #1 overall pick now? And he was like, oh yeah, I heard a site said that. That's cool. I was like, congrats. That was
All
random.
right.
North Oaks, Minnesota. Yeah, I didn't know he was from the great state, but,
Yeah.
that is
Yeah,
cool. I didn't
he went to Tino Grace in high school. And middle school, like football for Mounds View, we all play on the same teams with TG. So
okay.
Huh.
yeah, he was good in middle school. Like
I
I
hope so.
I mean, it's one of those things like I don't remember how good he was because I don't know. I was a lineman too, so I wasn't like watching him
Right,
blocks.
right.
If I was, that'd be a problem.
That would
So
be a problem.
Yeah, just try not to watch the 3-star.
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
like hike, nice stand up and let the guy sack my quarterback. But oh my gosh, look at Joel.
Just
But
call some stunts, funnel everything to him if he's so good. That's what they should have done. You were probably getting targeted, man, out there. The
dude,
defenses were probably like,
I was
let's not go after Alt. They were probably getting one-on-ones on you on purpose.
dude, I was like 5'8", 210 pounds. Like I was just like this. I was basically Mulcott playing offensive lineman. So while I'm like, oh, I was definitely a target man. Pick the 6'2" eighth grader who's athletic, or just take the little big boy with a little pedo stash going. Which one are you going to pick? You know. So yeah, I was definitely a target.
All
Anyway,
right, we got 2 more here. I wasn't gonna bring this guy up, but since James picked Victor out, I'm thinking there might be this is an okay question. Victor Wembanyama or Nikola Jokic?
Nikola Jokic. He's the best player in the world right now. I mean, you just have to. I think Victor has a higher ceiling than Jokic, but I think Jokic is going to end up pushing like top 12 player ever talks,
Maybe even
and
higher.
he never misses games,
Yeah.
and he has probably 8 years of being really freaking good left. So you still have the longevity. You have the best player in the world who just won a championship, who has just unbelievable, unbelievable, unbelievable efficiency. Yeah, the floor is best player in the world, and the ceiling is one of the greatest ever. I'm gonna stick with the floor ceiling here.
I think I disagree that Victor has like a higher ceiling than Jokic just because, well, I guess he's got the defense, but
That's why
Jokic is just
Victor
it,
can be top 5 on offense and top 2 on defense. Like
yeah. Yeah, that's pretty scary to think about. I don't know if we're talking right now because I don't think Jokic is going to play a long time.
you
And
don't.
this is reckless speculation, but I just don't think he like once he starts to lose his fastball, and like once he starts, like, is he going to stick around the NBA? He doesn't particularly like being here in America.
That's
Yeah.
good. That's
And
an
he doesn't
interesting point.
particularly love being an NBA player. It sounds like everyone who ever like has played with Jokic is like, yeah,
He
man,
hates his
Jokic
job.
just does this on the side. And he says that he's like, I don't like my job. I just do it.
Yeah.
So like once this contract is over for Jokic, is he going to be like, even if his game ages super well, which I think it could, is he going to be someone that really takes this as far as it can go, like deep into his 30s? So would you rather have, 4 years of Jokic or 10 years or 12 years of Wembanyama? I think it's a conversation. I think
It's something. I wouldn't say it's
Yeah.
I wouldn't
I
say
think
it's
it's fair.
likelihood.
but that's also like going on someone's personality and talking about something that doesn't really, I don't know. I guess I would go Jokic too, because you've got at least 3 years of like someone who can backpack you and win a championship guaranteed. So,
He's going to make $80 million a year in a couple of years. I mean, like legit, like dead. We're serious talk. He's going to probably sign a 5-year, $400 million contract. Like, I don't know how far you guys would go to get
right.
$80 million a year, but if he's just content with basketball, I'm sure he looks at that contract and says, I could buy
Worth
a
it.
couple more horses with
You're
this.
right.
Yeah.
Because in Serbia, that's like 15 billion trillion million dollars.
Yeah.
So it's kind of tough to turn down $1 trillion. So yeah, or dinars or whatever it is.
Speaking of Jokic,
Jokic is probably the right answer.
did you not see him like celebrate like crazy winning like his horse race championship
Yeah.
this week?
I
Like
did
he was
not
more
see
happy
that.
winning that horse race in Serbia than winning an NBA title. It was so funny.
He didn't care about the championship. He cared that was the real championship right there.
He's so
Mhm.
real. That guy's genuine.
He's so cool.
He is
He
cool.
doesn't care.
He does
But yeah,
not.
I would take Jokic too. I remember talking about this before, but I just don't see a path to where he's not a top 5 player within the next like, 7-ish years. Like I just think his game is gonna age so well to me because he doesn't rely on athleticism or like agility that much in his game. It's like it's all just like reaction based, and it's like it's some shot making and just like quick post scoring. Like I feel like he's gonna age really well, and I don't really see a big drop off, coming until maybe he just retires straight up. But yeah, I think he's gonna be really, really good for a long time.
He'll be an interesting case study, because I can see both trains
Yeah.
of thinking where it's like he doesn't rely on athleticism now, so his game is gonna age because as he gets older, some guys rely on it, and once it's
Yeah.
gone, it's gone. But I could also say he is going to get worse athletically as
Yeah.
time goes on, and
Yeah.
if he's just good enough to be athletic now, because who are some of the longest living the most longevity players in the history of the league? Vince Carter. People would say like he relied on his athleticism, and I think kind of
He
what
was
made
like a
him
role
special.
player. He wasn't the 27 point
Right.
guy for a long time.
But I guess the argument, the two
though.
trains of thought is, if you're super athletic, once you lose a step, you can still be an athletic NBA player or athletic enough to play
Yeah.
in the NBA. I could see a world where if Jokic loses a step, there's a certain threshold of athleticism that you need to have that
Mhm.
perhaps he could dip under, which would
Okay.
be my concern. But I can't project it, and I also just not sure. But I
Yeah.
think that it'll be interesting to watch how his game ages because of that.
For sure.
Not that I'm really making a prediction one way or the other.
The nice thing though is that 7'4" wingspan ain't going away.
Nope.
Yeah.
His arms don't get shorter, and
Nope.
his hand-eye coordination likely won't get worse unless he like loses eyesight or something. I agree with your point in a different way. Like Dirk wasn't very reliant on his athleticism, and like what ended his career. Like obviously he played till he was
He
40,
can
but
run up the court.
Right. That's
he
true.
couldn't run. I mean, his knees were messed up. So like if Jokic, like, I don't want to like jinx it, but like developed like a knee problem and he just is like lumbering up the court and he's not comfortable. I mean, your feel goes away when you're not feeling comfortable on the court. So I think that is what would probably lead to a regression more so than he's not jumping as high. If he's like
Right.
dealing with like a foot problem or a knee problem, I think that could be like, the eventual inevitable downfall for him.
And Dirk is a cautionary tale because he regrets spending so much time in the league, and you watch him walk around now, he limps and he doesn't look good moving around. So
No.
Yeah.
yeah, if you use him as an example, if you're a European big who doesn't really rely on athleticism and maybe can push their body a long way, like you don't want to end up like Dirk, really, like in his post NBA life, it sounds
Yeah.
like. So,
You're
but
right.
Dirk played until he was like 40. Jokic
Yeah,
is
like
28. So we're talking
yeah,
about a long ass time from now, most likely.
for sure.
Mhm.
All right, we got one more here, and I kind of got a little creative for this one because it is kind of hard to think of players that come to mind that could actually have a chance to be over Victor. So we're gonna go with, who would you rather have, Victor Wembanyama or Chet Holmgren plus Jalen Williams?
Victor.
Chet could be pretty similar to Victor,
Chet's
right?
awesome. I love Chet, but I think
I don't know enough about Jalen Williams to be completely honest with you, so I'll go with Victor, but I could be underrating Williams.
Williams was second in Rookie of the Year voting, but
Yeah.
it was one of those like Paolo was obviously going to win it, and somebody had to be second type of thing. But
Yeah,
Jalen Williams is really good.
he's really good.
I just think he's really good. I don't think he's transcendent. I think Chet's a star, maybe even a
Top
top
superstar.
3-star. I just don't think he's like. I think you take the generational player over the really good star and the really good player. I think what's a good version of this? Like, you'd probably take prime. I'm not saying Victor's gonna be LeBron. Don't get me wrong. I'm just saying like you would take prime LeBron over Paul George and Danny Granger together. It's one of those things.
You take Jokic over like Cat and D'Angelo Russell.
Thunder Twitter is going to be mad at you for that one.
I'm taking D'Angelo Russell over Nikola Jokic any day of the week, man.
My ball don't stop over here.
James loves D'Angelo Russell, by the way. Favorite player.
I also kind of like D'Angelo Russell, to be honest.
He's kidding.
But,
he's joking.
Oh, you hate D'Angelo Russell?
He hates him. He'll hit on him every second of the day if he could.
I don't mind D'Angelo Russell, but yeah, I agree. But Chet could be pretty damn good. I don't know.
Really
I don't know enough
He'll
about
be good.
now. This is my NBA weakness is showing. It's like I can't articulate exactly like what Wembanyama's ceiling is compared to Chet. I know that they're similar players, and I know that Wembanyama is the more exciting one.
Yeah.
Maybe he's got a tighter handle and maybe a better shooter, and they both could be pretty special. And I know that. Yeah, I think I would go with Wemby though. Just I agree with your train of logic where it's like if you've got someone who could really be a super duper star, it's better than two really good players.
I'll put it in football terms.
Sure, please do so I can understand.
I think if football was a language, I just finished my second class. But so I would say it's like comparing Stephon Diggs to Randy Moss, or like rookie Jamar Chase to Randy Moss. I would say that's like the Chet versus Victor ceiling comps, and that makes sense.
Similar, but just kind of better at everything.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I would go Wemby, but
okay, awesome. Yeah, I think we thank goodness that Zach picked like Jokic or somebody, because if he picked young players, it would have been so boring because I would have just so that was very smart of you. And yeah, I need to listen to some of your football podcasts more, Theo, because as I've gotten more into like basketball and theater and stuff, like my football like knowledge, kind of like a language, is starting to like slightly fade away, where I know the players, but I have no idea what they're doing. So I gotta work on that.
Just they're running quarters. That's what everybody's in the league is doing. So just if anyone asks, just say they're running quarters out there, and you'll be right.
Appreciate that. I'm gonna use that on my broadcast.
They're putting a roof on everything and making you forcing you to check it down or run the football. Just say something like that. You'll be.
I was gonna say running back bad.
Yeah, there you go. That's all you need to know about football these days. Running back bad, wide receiver good, edge rusher good.
Appreciate that. That's really good. It's like in French, like there's like 4 sayings and you're good around the city. So You know, like bonne journée, have a good day. Bonsoir, good night. Je voudrais un sandwich au jambon. I want a ham sandwich. If you know those 3 things, you're going to survive in France.
Yeah, just
Yeah.
put a roof on everything. Running backs don't matter, and you need a quarterback on a rookie contract. If you just say those 3 things over and over again, you'll have an ESPN job as an NFL analyst in absolutely no time.
ESPN, man.
Or at the
Well,
very least, FS1.
yeah, the football. I think sports media is kind of getting funny because everybody says the same thing, but in different fonts now. Like we need a little more creativity, I think, these days.
I
But
agree.
yeah, so we are approaching the end of this show. Thank you guys so much for listening. And before we conclude the episode, hey, Theo, Zach, you guys want to say anything? Theo, I'll start with you first.
You can find me at Theo Ash NFL on TikTok and Twitter. I'm on the Stay Hot podcast where we talk mostly football, especially these days with the basketball season wrapped up, but some basketball as well. And you'll find Matthew Sponauer, my co-host, on there, who's a big basketball guy and will post basketball videos on the YouTube account. So follow Stay Hot, follow Theo Ash NFL, and thanks for having me on.
Yeah, nice to have you on, Theo. Great show. Yeah, that's all I gotta say.
Theo, it was
Dylan Brooks for most improved player.
Dylan Brooks, how many shots a game can you take without getting benched? That is going
25.
to be do a Vegas over under 18 and a half shots. But all right. Yeah, Theo, it was a blast having you on. We got to get you back on the episode definitely in the near future if we can. Best of luck on your move to Denver.
Oh, yes. Thank you.
Have you had Mellow Mushroom yet before? Oh, it's in Phoenix too.
I don't think so.
It's a really good pizza place. It's like a pizza pretzel place.
Okay,
and they got one in Tempe now, but I remember trying it in Denver, downtown Denver. So good. So they got the sauces figured out, man. Like Paris, here's the thing with Paris, man. I
Not
love
as
the
good as
food.
Denver.
It is fresh. Like Paris food's really good, really fresh, and pretty cheap. The only problem is they don't understand sauces here. They don't understand. They got ketchup, they got mayonnaise, and that's really it. So they got to get the sauces figured out. Like America, you can go to restaurants and you have like 18 different sauces. When I go back home this week, man, I am going to go and drown in sauces. I might bathe in it, honestly. Like it's bad here. So definitely got to get this figured out here. For example, on the Pizza Hut website here, the 2 sauces as options, it's not marinara sauce, it's not ranch, it's ketchup or barbecue sauce for your pizza.
Oh,
it's really messed up.
Come on, France.
Right? Like the cheese is good, man, but like the no sauce is kind of ruins that for me. So
that's weird.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. We will be back next week. Once again, I'll probably be back in America at that point. So things will start getting normal. The consistency of the content will continue to trend up. But until next time, I'm Wilder Adams. He is Zach Radine and Theo Ash. This is Windshield Hoops.